Hey there, I'm Mike Robinson with BlackHawk Paramotors USA, and today we have another tips and tricks for you. You know, there's a couple things that your paramotor could use, and they're not that expensive. One is a cylinder head temperature gauge. A gauge that reads the constant temperature as well as max temperature is a really good thing to have. Secondly, a tachometer. You can tune with the tach, you can see what your RPMs are in flight, and it keeps track of the hours on your motor. There's a lot of fancy units out there, or fancy gauges that you can purchase. They seem to be very problematic. We really live by the adage of keeping it simple. A tach similar to this and the head temperature gauge, or the cylinder head temperature gauge, is all you need. You can purchase those through us for under $100. The installation, of which I'm going to show you, is really easy. If you purchase a BlackHawk Paramotor and you decide to get the tach and the cylinder head temperature gauge, just let us know and we will install them prior to shipping the unit to you. If you have any other unit, these tachs and cylinder head temperature gauges work just fine on yours as well. Today I'm going to show you how to install them. We're using a Kestrel as the example motor, so to speak. These are the parts or tools that you're going to need to install it. First thing you need is a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit, a pair of cutters, a Phillips screwdriver, which is really only going to be used to remove your spark plug, and on the HE motors, an 11mm wrench, the very small zip ties, and of course your cylinder head temperature gauge or your tach. Okay, the first thing that we're going to install is the tachometer. So remove the tachometer from the package and you want to stretch it out. We're going to install it from the actual throttle lever or handle itself and work our way back towards the engine. Remember to hold the handle and the throttle like you're flying. That way you can line up the gauge so that you can actually read it. It's not backwards. Okay, so I've held up the throttle. I know which way my gauge needs to go. I've taken one of the small zip ties, moving it up as far up the handle as I can, and I've secured that. The next thing I'm going to do is apply the next zip tie to this location, thereby anchoring the RPM gauge. As you can see, I've secured the 2 zip ties. Now to tighten them, a little trick is to simply grab it lightly with your clippers and pull. Now, as you can see, it's very snug. You don't need to cut these off now. I would prefer you cut everything off at the same time, that way you don't miss anything. The next step, stretch the cable out, and you're going to make a wind every now and then. 6 winds of this cable is all you need. If you go too many, it will be short of reaching the spark plug. I'm sure somebody will say, hey, you just did 6. Well, maybe I did, but the point is don't do too many, otherwise you will end up short. I've kept it fairly taut. I'm going to put a zip tie up here, and then I will fill in with a couple zip ties here. I don't like to use too many because it seems that the little heads of the zip ties can possibly catch on something, or occasionally they do. The point is I want to keep the cable tight to the throttle cable itself. Looking good. I've now passed it behind the net. Remember, stay on the throttle cable. I'll make one more wrap around there. No reason to disconnect anything. I'm just going to keep going around until I can come up to the spark plug cable in a place that's kind of incognito or out of the way. You don't want wires just kind of flopping around or hanging out. Now that I've come up in that spot where it can stay nice and neat, I'm going to attach another zip tie. Okay. Now, this is the secret to making it work. A lot of people will add a lot of winds of the red cord. This is not what you do. 3 or 4 max, and I put them right in this location here. I love those little zip ties, or even the invention of the zip tie. It's well exceeded duct tape in my opinion. Okay, so here's 4. If you notice, I kind of bent it out a little ways. I'm going to attach one of the zip ties there. Trying my best to keep it fairly tight, tight coil around there, around the spark plug wire itself. I can always retighten it a little bit after I get this on. So you see I've secured it here. And I can just tighten it a little bit. And I'll put on another zip. You look back and you wonder how we could have done without these dang things. Check it for tightness and zip her up. That's a beautiful connection right there. If yours looks like that, you're doing good. As you can see, I have a little bit of excess left over. Not a big deal. What I'm simply going to do is just kind of fold it up, kind of like a bow, and secure it with one more zip tie. Remember, I try to keep it as nice and neat and clean as possible. It's a little bit tighter in here, but this is really where I'd like to see it. There we go. Okay, nice and neat. Notice here the kill switch wire is not pulling on the coil. It's loose so that it can kind of have some movement. I like the same with this wire here as well. I don't want to see it taut. That's great right there. Now I'm going to make sure that my spark plug cable itself is out of the way. I don't want it to get anywhere near the exhaust. So I use a little bit larger size zip tie and secure it. Again, I make sure it's not being pulled on anything. You notice there's plenty of movement here, here, as well as here. Now, we're simply going to cut these off. Remember to cut them as snug to the head as you can. There's been instances where people have been cut because it was cut at an angle or not cut all the way flat with the head. Make sure you don't cut your wire. I've done that. Wrong wire. Make sure they're all cut off and flat. Last but not least, we're going to cut these all off. Again, remember to cut them tight, especially in here. This is where your hands might be. A good pair of cutters always helps. Beautiful. Okay, so you see, here's my installation. Put my hand in it. And I can read my tack clearly. The tack is also an hour meter. Always make sure that your throttle continues to work like it should. Remember that 1/8 inch of play. Got to have that 1/8 inch of play in there. And that feels great. That's pretty much it. As you can see, it'd probably take 10 minutes to install the tach yourself on your motor. I hope you found today's BlackHawk Paramotor tips and tricks video informative. Remember, if you have any suggestions for future tips and tricks, give us a call. Call Heidi in the office. We'd love to hear from you anyway at 209-786-7899. Or of course you can email us at team@blackhawkparamotor.com. Thank you.